Hello, welcome back. Okay, next up, we have a keynote session with one of utmost importance to any dealer that uses Google as part of their digital marketing strategy, which I'm sure you all do. Scott Sinclair is the industry manager at Google and YouTube, and he'll be explaining how, in an age of digital dealerships, you can harness the power of Google across platforms such as Search, YouTube, and its display network. So please welcome Scott Sinclair to the stage. Scott, nice to see you as always. Thanks for taking the time to come along to CDX. We've got a packed audience here. I'm sure many of you have got questions for Scott. If you've got one, please put up your hand. There'll be a number of my guys around with microphones and I'll try and get to you as soon as possible. But firstly, Scott, let's start with a general one. How can dealers use Google to increase showroom footfall?
So I'll start with the obvious one. The obvious one's probably search. So for those that have been following the developments of our AdWords product, there's a couple of new innovations that we've just announced, which I'll share with the guys. So for the first time earlier on this year, we announced that you're able to now measure ad clicks to footfall. And for businesses that are car dealerships, that's probably quite game-changing. So gone are the days where you have to measure your online advertising through test drive form fills and phone calls. But you can actually now see when someone clicks on a search ad and then physically turns up at the dealership. And for you guys that know what your conversion rate's in store, hazard a guess, it's probably 1 in 4, 1 in 5, something like that. When you can then understand that, it simply becomes a case of how many clicks can I get in order to turn up, for people to then turn up at the dealership. Now, we've evolved those products as well. So we first of all talk about search, but you can now also measure footfall from people who have clicked on a display ad and then clicked. Is that any better?
Yeah.
Clicked on a display ad or watched a YouTube video and then physically turned up at the dealership as well. So all of this online is what we call online to offline measurement. And we're now automatically adding that into your AdWords account. So there's nothing you need to do other than make sure you've got your location extensions enabled, and the data will start to come through in your AdWords account. So that's probably the main call to action for anyone who's doing Google advertising now. Get your location extensions enabled and start measuring that footfall that's coming through to the dealership.
Just how much does Google know about customers? And I mean, can you even predict when someone's ready to buy?
So I'll answer your question in two parts. So Google, our customers are, so what do we know about customers is the question. I guess the differentiator between Google and many other platforms that you can use for advertising is that we've got a really powerful search engine that enables to work out intent. And it's the intent that you can then use to harness and target your advertising. So we've got models, audience targeting that runs in the background. When we can work out and we can model the scenarios when someone is likely to want to buy a car, and we make that audience targeting available to the millions of people that use Google AdWords. The audience targeting that we talk about is called in-market audiences. And there's various ones that you can use in the auto sector. We can work out when someone is in market for a used car, in market for a new car. We can also work out when someone's in market for a particular manufacturer type. So if someone's in market for a Volkswagen or in market for a Fiat. We can also work out car types as well. So if someone's in market for a hatchback or in market for a convertible. All of those signals that people are coming onto Google Search, they're coming onto the Google Display Network, and they're coming onto YouTube, is giving us information that allows us to then build up these models to work out and build out these audience targeting solutions for you.
So can you predict when someone's ready to buy, and can you share that information with your customers, or is it something that they need to delve into the analytics to find out?
So it's all shared, it's all available within Google AdWords. So what happens is every day our in-market audiences are refreshed constantly when someone is demonstrating the behaviors of being in market, as we would call it. So take, for example, the behavior, you've just decided you want to buy a new car, and the first thing you'll probably do is you'll go onto Google Search, and you'll type in, what's the best hatchback? Now, at that moment, are you looking to buy a car, or are you at the beginning of the research process? At the beginning of the research process, you'll do lots and lots of research. As you work your way through, at some point, the frequency with which you use Google search, the frequency with which you're on different platforms, allows Google to then build up a model of what that behavior looks like and how likely you are to be buying a car. And it's those people that we can then offer that targeting solution through AdWords. So there's, for those that are familiar with AdWords, you can simply go in and any time find that audience, and we'll give you lots of information about that audience. So we'll tell you how many people are in it, how many likely display impressions you can serve, how many times you could show that person in the YouTube video. We'll tell you what the demographic split is, so male, female, and then if it's unknown, then we'll tell you that. We'll show you the age demographic split across that audience as well. So everyone in the UK who's looking to buy a used car, we'll tell you that data, and you can make some business decisions off the back of that. And again, that's all free within AdWords.
And have you got any examples of any dealers that are using that information incredibly successfully?
Yes, but I can't share it because that would be confidential.
Okay, so give us the best practice tips on how the dealers here could use that information.
So in terms of people that are using it, car dealerships, car portals, car buying services, I work with lots of those different businesses in the UK. The main bulk of them are using what we call as these in-market audiences. Those in-market audiences help you advertise to consumers who are in-market. Where I see it working effectively is things like big used car supermarkets when they want to target used car buyers. So they're using it effectively, and what they're doing is they're kind of reaching out to those users through YouTube as a starting point. Once you get that user, so once someone has viewed your advert on YouTube, you can then build up an audience list. Now that audience list then belongs to the advertiser. Once you know that someone's watched that video, they're on your audience list, you can then remarket to those people using the Google Display Network or on Google Search. Now if, for example, you take a real scenario, I'm served an advert from a large car dealer group, and it talks about Volkswagens or volume brands, because I've demonstrated I'm in market for a volume manufacturer brand. You can then use that data, add me to an audience list to then help tailor the messages that you then reserve to me so that the experience I get as a consumer is much more personalized. And as I then continue my research journey, you can be informative and you can help me get closer to that point of purchase using those data signals that I'm sharing with you through the Google platform.
So what about YouTube? I mean, how should dealers use that? Is it practical to upload a video of every car that they've got on sale, or is there a different way that they should be using the platform?
If you've got the time and the capacity to do every single video on YouTube, whilst that may seem helpful, the audience is probably very small and very niche. Again, if you think about the average stock turnover of a particular vehicle, anything from 34 days to sort of 60, 70 days is the kind of the sweet spot. That asset that you've created is probably not very useful to you, and it's probably not going to get you an awful lot of views. So I'd kind of question the value of doing such a video. However, if you only sell Volkswagen Golfs, now that might not be a real scenario, but let's assume that you only sell Volkswagen Golfs. It may be possible that you could create a generic Volkswagen Golf that you can use continually to demonstrate that you're the best retailer of Volkswagen Golfs. And that's how I'd think about YouTube. Now, you'd only want to show that video through TrueView advertising to people who are in market for a Volkswagen, probably in market for a used car, and within a 40-mile radius of your dealership. Now, for those people, that's an incredibly smart use of the video asset that you could create, but also highly relevant to the audience that you would then show that to as well. So it's a question of, I think the symptom within digital is, we focused a lot over the years about getting really narrow and really super targeted. But actually, the audience size at a really targeted level is quite small. And therefore, it's very intensive, and you've got to produce lots of assets and do lots and lots of things. I'd encourage you to think bigger again. So we've been to the narrow thing, and we kind of go, OK, we could be super targeted, and the power is there. But how effective is that? Think about going slightly broader and owning more of an audience and broadening your reach so that you can hit more potential consumers, which will help you grow your business.
And how can dealers look after their reputation on Google? Is there any best practice tips there that they can do?
I'd probably say the best practice I give you is just don't ignore it. So again, yeah, think about your Google My Business, you've got Trustpilot, you've got Review, you've got lots of review sites. Very easy for a consumer to just go out there and kind of say nasty things or whatever. So be aware of these things, don't just ignore it, but be positive about it and use it as an opportunity to demonstrate that you care for your customers. I think there's lots of experiences. We see it on Google Google My Business now. And I'm sure the guys at Trustpilot will kind of echo this, that simply ignoring it is not really the option. If you're seen to be responding to a consumer and addressing some concerns, I think that's a much better way to then demonstrate that you actually care, rather than just ignoring it and saying, well, I'm not going to bother responding to that user.
Okay, I've got a few more questions, but there's lots of people in the audience here today. Has anybody got a question they'd like to ask Scott at this time? Anybody? Just stick your hand up and I'll see if I can find you. Yeah, it's just one down in the front, Nige.
Hello. Hi, Scott. Does reviews, particularly Google reviews, affect SEO at all?
I don't know, because I work in the advertising bit of the business.
Thanks.
What I can tell you, though, is that on a paid ad, the increase in click-through rate is between 15 and 20% from having a review. Star ratings that you see on an ad, they're 15 to 20% more likely to click on the ad if it's got the star reviews than if it doesn't have the star reviews. And for those of you that have got or not got the star reviews but are wanting them, it's an automatically added feature. You need a minimum of 30 reviews with a score of 3.5 stars or more. Once you hit that threshold, the review stars will then start to show up on Google search for your paid ads. Again, I'm not sure about the organic stuff. I'm not at liberty to that.
If dealers were going to do a Google audit of their business, I mean, what things should they be focusing on that they can practically take home today and do tomorrow?
So let's start with the free stuff. Google My Business. I hope that everyone in this room has got a Google My Business account and has set up their discovery. For those that have experienced this, when you search on Google phone, again, smartphone being the destination where people go, you want to be showing up on your Google My Business reviews. This is your location information, this is the picture of the map, get your phone number in there, get the directions in there so that Google can help your customers come and find you. That would be the first thing I'd do. The second thing I'd do is probably start with Google search. And this is the AdWords side of thing. Review all of your search keywords, make sure that they're performing, but don't look at them in isolation. And what I mean by that is don't measure the effectiveness of your paid search advertising simply by people filling in online forums or filling in or giving you a phone call. We've seen over time, and we talked about store visits at the start of this, we've seen over time that there's actually a decline in people prepared to fill in test drive forms online, and less people are phoning dealerships to tell them that they're going to turn up. We've done some studies recently where we've seen around about 44% of customers won't tell you that they're about to turn up. And when I say won't tell you, it means that they're not going to fill in the test drive form, they're not going to give you a call, they're simply going to come onto your website and then they're going to turn up. And there's a couple of new innovations that are coming out. For those that are familiar with the technology, it's been around for a couple of years now, called beacons. So beacons is like a Bluetooth-enabled technology that Google has been working on with a number of third parties. It's built on a technology platform called Eddystone. The Eddystone technology allows you to measure footfall from people who are coming into the dealerships. Now, this technology, you can buy a Bluetooth beacon for about £5. You can stick it on the roof, and what it will do is it will take phone signals. So when an Android or an iOS device turns up, you can then measure footfall. So no longer do you need to stand at the front door with a clicker and measure people coming in and out. But when someone walks in, what happens is these Bluetooth beacons, they're little Bluetooth powered, so they've got a little battery in them. The average life is about 3 years, so just to give you some proxies for that. What it does is 5 times every second, it will emit a signal. And that signal will be a bit like Wi-Fi signal, it's just kind of pinging out. When someone walks in, Android and iOS devices both have this technology enabled as part of their operating systems. And what you can do is you can trigger a notification to the user which says, welcome to your dealership. Now, it sounds intrusive, and the bit behind it is, for those that have got an iOS or an Android device, you'll be familiar where you've maybe got an option where you can enable what's called nearby notifications. For those that have not experienced this, switch it on, and when you come into a Bluetooth-enabled beacon, you'll be greeted with a message, because by switching on nearby notifications, you can trigger these notifications. Now, not everyone has these notifications enabled. So for those of you that have downloaded apps normally when they're downloaded and you've installed an app, one of the features that you'll be asked to enable is, can we track your location? For some of those technology companies now that are kind of taking advantage of beacon technology, the app has the code in it which recognizes the signal which comes out of these beacons. So again, you can prompt notifications when you know someone is physically in your store. So again, think of, you've got an app installed, you've walked into the dealership. If it's your app, you can message them and say, welcome to our dealership. We actually know that you were on our app 3 weeks ago and you looked at Vauxhall Corsas. We've been really helpful, and we've gone and put all the Vauxhall Corsas in the back left-hand corner. Here's some directions to go and find them. Now that's incredibly powerful from a consumer experience, from a customer experience angle, and that's where innovative companies are now starting to look at it. I've been working with some retailers recently on some of this innovation, and they're kind of at the forefront of doing some of this stuff. But this technology is available to everyone, including car dealerships. And Google, we're actually working with a number of car dealerships to set this infrastructure up and go out and map some of their stores as well. So that's the kind of innovation now that you can do, and it's available to everyone in this room who's using Google AdWords and beacon technology.
Sounds incredible. Has anybody else got another question for Scott in the audience here? Anybody? Yeah.
Real quick one. Beacons. Does the device have to have the Bluetooth turned on for it to pick it up, or is it just measure any iOS or Android device that's in the vicinity?
Yeah. No is the answer. So they're called Bluetooth beacons, but they actually don't use Bluetooth. I'll give a more technical answer to this. So this is quite techy, so apologies if I go slightly geeky on you here. Inside your Android operating system and your Apple iOS, there's a bit of code. In an iOS, it's called a Beacons Proximity CocoaPod, and in an Android, it's called Beacons Proximity API. Those two bits of code exist on your phone now. If you've got the latest iOS devices, I think iOS 6 was when it was first released, and the latest Android builds have got this technology in it. What that technology does is it understands when a beacon signal is sent, much like when you get a Wi-Fi signal. So you've probably recognized the behavior. If you've got Wi-Fi switched on, it then says, I've detected a Wi-Fi signal, would you like to connect? Beacons proximity works in exactly the same way. I've detected a signal. The difference is with beacons is that signal can then be sent to a cloud, either the Google Cloud or the Apple Cloud, and decoded. And that decoding means that there is a signal then sent back. So that's kind of, so you can send any kind of, you can configure your beacon to send a signal out that says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That correlates to, would you like to order a coffee from the barista that's in the back left-hand corner, and we'll bring it to you. So there's lots, you can just configure whatever that signal should mean, and the iOS and the Android devices will do the decoding essentially of what that number means. Does that make sense?
So Scott, should dealers be managing their own Google ad spend, or do you recommend them using an agency?
It depends. Yeah, it depends. I mean, the agencies in the room will want me to say agencies, and those that pay the agency fees will want me to say do it yourself. The truth is, it's probably a combination of both. It depends on your budget. It depends on the level of complexity. It depends on what it is you actually want to do. It depends on what else you're doing as well. So let's be clear, we don't live in a Google-only world anymore. You've heard from Twitter, you've heard from Facebook. Those guys have got incredibly powerful platforms as well, which in themselves are independent of Google AdWords. So suddenly we're into a multimedia, complicated world where you need someone to understand lots of these different channels. Now, if you're big enough and complicated enough and you have the budget, then it might make sense to have it in-house. The benefits of that could be things like you get the expertise of understanding how the business works, you're much closer to the business, so the decision making can be faster and then executed quicker. However, the advantages of an agency is, let's be clear, the used car dealership industry is often not the sexiest, I'm being completely honest, and therefore the availability of talent who's queuing up to come and work in your dealership, you're competing against all of those agencies who can offer variety in the work that those kind of people are doing. So they might work on a used car dealership as well as, I don't know, a theatre that's just down the corner. The advantage you get from that exposure is they can bring experiences and learnings from other industries. Now again, you might think that's valuable or you might not think that's valuable, and I guess that kind of sits at the nub of the answer to the question really, which is it depends on what you prioritize as important when it comes to managing your online presence and what media you're using and how much control you want to have over it.
And what about search volumes for automotive? Are people still interested in cars as much as they used to be?
Yeah, so I know we hear a lot about the negative impacts of Brexit. Well, the good news is search volumes are actually up 4% year on year. So take the first 5 months of this year and compare them to the first 5 months of last year, and we've actually got 4% more people looking for used cars this year than last year. So if you ask me, there are more people looking to buy cars than last year. Now, what we have seen is a change in behavior. So the change in behavior is from people looking for new cars versus used cars. That's the difference, and I think that translates through into the industry as well. If you read the reports from the SMMT and things like that. So what we see is that correlation. However, the total automotive market is still growing from a Google perspective. Now I caveat that with from a Google perspective, which means more people are searching on Google for cars than they were last year. Interestingly though, if you measured that purely on a desktop, it's going down. But on a smartphone, search volumes are actually up 19% year over year. And that accounts for around about 55% of all searches are now on smartphones within the automotive sector.
Okay, that's about all we've got time for, I'm afraid. Up next on the Car Dealer Live stage will be the bosses of some of the largest car supermarkets in the UK. Join us at 3 o'clock to hear from Car Shop, Trade Centre UK and Imperial Car Supermarket. But now, thank you very much to Google's Scott Sinclair.